Hello everybody, I'm Carolyn Fornataro, host of Cultivating Innovation with Tetra, adaptive tools for the farm and kitchen. This podcast showcases customized solutions for overcoming barriers for people with disabilities. Each episode puts the spotlight on a real-life issue and follows how Tetra responded. Tetra has been building creative solutions and overcoming barriers for over 35 years. This podcast is a collaboration between Ingenium, Canada's Museums of Science and Innovation, the Disability Foundation in Vancouver, and the Tetra Society of North America. For today's episode, I'm joined by Carolyn Fornataro. She is a teacher at the School of the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, also known as CHEO. She educates kids with accessibility issues and is the client for the Raised Garden project with Tetra. The project consists of 3 tables glued together. There are holes in the table to put containers in to give her students access to different things such as dirt, water, and everything that grows in their garden. Each space was designed for her students. About half of them are designed to be wheelchair accessible for a specific student. But Carolyn hopes to keep using her raised garden for her future classes. So thank you, Carolyn, for joining me. Pretty much describe what the project is. So what do you call it, what it is?
Okay, yeah, and I think that's something that's kind of gone back and forth. And for myself, the name of the project kind of morphed throughout, the last few years. So because we needed to try to encourage to be outside more, it actually worked out really well because I already had the idea of wanting an outdoor classroom. And then because of COVID, we were able to kind of push that ahead so that we could be outside. And that for the most part, that's where I am, is outside with my 5 classes.
So why gardening?
So gardening just was a natural flow into that space. I come from a long line of gardeners. I didn't realize that I think I made an assumption that everybody knew this stuff. And then as I was recognizing, I should maybe start teaching this kind of stuff. And the kids are, they're kindergarten. So they love this stuff. They love bugs. They love dirt. They love seeds and plants and picking flowers, even if they're, dandelions. So the buy-in is already there. The engagement's already there. And for a teacher, that's more than half your battle. So of course I looked around at different products and, a lot of different sites would say they had an accessible garden or an accessible raised garden, and then I would go to the site or I would look at different things. And having had so much experience with different ages and different equipment, because not all our children are, some of our children walk, some of our children need assistance with using a walker, and there's multiple types of walkers. Some of our kiddos then use wheelchairs or standers, and not one wheelchair is the same because they're made to they're typically made so that they support that individual child. So armrests can be this high for one child and much lower for another child, depending on their physical needs. So having an actual table that they could actually get in and not just be positioned on the side or just be there while their more able-bodied ambulatory friends were gardening. If I was going to call this, access for all, I really wanted it to be access for all. Tetra came up because I used to share my office with our tech teacher, and she had gotten in touch with Tetra about something more tech assisted for one of the students. And so we were just kind of chatting, and I would come in from gardening or working with the kids outside, and then it came up, hey, how about, you contact Tetra and see what can they come up with. And that was the first time I've ever heard of Tetra. So that was last early spring. So it's been a year plus. I didn't know anything. I'm not an engineer or a designer or anything. I'm a gym teacher. And so it was luckily my husband, who also, we worked together, that's where we met and got married, and was working with kids with disabilities and stuff. So he knows what I do for a living. And he, even though, he's a graphic artist, he had the design piece that he could help mock up a template of what he could put my ideas into a drawing.
Okay.
And then we went from there. And then spoke with Paul Marriage, and then he connected me with Cooper, and then we just started, and I relied a lot on our occupational therapist, Julie Bachin, and Sandy, our occupational therapist aide, because they knew all the widths that a cutout should be for the chairs, the height in terms of the clearance of the arms. I mean, it was a process. Like, it took a long time. We got the table here, I think, almost just before the snow flew. Like, it was like, but it was like trying this out, and he made a prototype, and then we'd look at it, and we'd and then at first, I think it was like, oh, it's going to be a raised garden table, like for like having the soil in, and then it be a garden, like a raised garden. And then I thought, in terms of drainage and all these other questions that came up. And then I recognized when I would teach how much I needed a table like this for like the kids to harvest seeds, to be able to cut open the fruit and vegetables that we had grown, for them to explore it, like for them to mix. When we have our gardens, each class has a garden opposite to the garden table, and so the kids use the garden table, their work table, to mix up the soil to then fill their gardens with. So the table has been like, it's just been a whole lot of learning.
It's been there since the beginning, and it helped with the process.
It really, it anchors it, right? Like, because the kids are like, yes, we're learning, but then they're like, oh yeah, okay. They're really like, they're getting in there, and they're using it for when we harvested radishes. They take their radishes, they put it in their work table bin, and they get the water and they wash it, and they decide what part do we eat, what part do we compost, and it just kind of, it wraps it up in a bow, right? Like it just, it allows the work to be, we're not just doing it for the sake of, look, we're gardening, we're gardening.
You're like, actually doing it.
Yeah. They're learning how to sow seeds and harvest seeds so that we can plant them again the next year. Like, and the table is, the table is lovely. And the table also, to be frank, there are times on a hot day we just water play on the table. But it's still, and the fact that it works, the fact that I think when you work with anyone with any form of accessibility issue, you're always having to adapt something. You're always, go get the elastic and MacGyver this, and this is like, we can just, there are, depending on the certain kiddo, there is still a little bit of modification. But in terms of, go to the garden table, kids, and we're starting to work. We don't spend 15 minutes trying to like get them.
It's already there.
They're there, and they slide right underneath, or they go and they stand at their corner, and it's just, it's lovely. It's really lovely.
I noticed when I saw the table, it's like it's one table, but each like section is for a specific kid. So it's propped up or down to be for that specific kid. And I noticed the way that you placed, there was one kid in a wheelchair, you put her in the middle. You didn't place her in the corner. Was that intentional?
That's where the cutouts are. So the cutouts, and I think that's the other thing, is that was intentional too, right? That led itself in the design, but the fact that there is a thing about inclusivity, right? And how they are part of a class, and they are part of a community, and you want those kiddos that are maybe having more challenges physically, you want them to be surrounded with their more or less more able-bodied friends. And often what happens is that, okay, well, this table will be for the kids that are ambulatory so they can walk and they can stand and support their own weight. But then we'll have a special table for the kids that, you know, are in wheelchairs or in some more higher equipment needs, let's say. And so it works out in terms of the inclusion piece, and it works out just in terms of the structural piece. Making a cutout on a side, and then it's just in terms of safety. If I had a wheelchair on a corner, especially on an outdoor corner, anyone coming to assist or any of the other kids that, you know, a lot of our kids have issues with their gaits and their balance and stuff. It's quite easy that they often can't clear their feet. So they can't pick up their foot to a full height. And so they would trip on a wheelchair if it was placed in the corner. So there's a lot of reasons why the placement of things happen, from technical pieces to the whole social emotional pieces kind of thing. Yeah, and I think the thing is too is that I knew what I wanted for a very long time. I really wanted this to be this. And I think that was part of my thing, is that often when it comes to adapting equipment and adapting things for kids with special needs, we kind of settle. And I didn't want to settle. I was like, no, if we're going to do this, if we're going to spend the time and do this, I want us to take the time and do it right the first time. Yes, there's always going to be those tweaks. Like we did do a tweak. So originally, both the side pieces that are attached to the higher table, they both were at the same level. And then we looked at it because we had the kids come out from a couple of different classes and realized, you know what? We don't need those two side tables to be the same height. That's actually not the best idea, because we have arms of different chairs that are at different heights of clearance. So we talked to Cooper and got back organized and said, you know, how can we do this? How can we drop one of the tables down so that, you know, and then we have a little doot, 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 doot. It's kind of like a stair-ish kind of configuration. And then that, it just made it right for those certain chairs that need that height and this height and that height. And it doesn't have to be the cutouts. It's kind of like going back to universal design, which I could talk like a blue streak on, because I'm very passionate about universal design in the community and in education. But just because there's 3 cutouts at this table does not mean, hey, child who is ambulatory, you can't go stand in that cutout. By having those 3 cutouts, it's not preventing. If I had a class one year that all 7 students, none of them needed to use a wheelchair for mobility or any other kind of equipment piece, I still have 7 spots and it still works. So that's the universal design of it. And so I'm pretty happy with that table. Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like it works, like seeing like the children interact with it. Last question before I stop this. Do you have a sort of message or something you want to say that I didn't ask or you didn't have the opportunity to say that the people listening to this podcast will hear that you want them to hear?
I mean, I think in my experience in working with people with physical challenges in all, you know, I've worked with children to adults with physical issues or developmental and autism, the whole 9 yards, is get outside. Get outside. And I think that's the beginning. Because I think once we recognize that outside and all the wonders that it brings, it then sparks an interest. You know, you can be inside talking things to death, right? But it's not until you're outside and you see the bug or you see the worm or you look at the flower or you see the wild strawberry. It's not until you're out there that you see it. And then the benefits of being outside. Everybody can benefit from being outside. And again, just with all my past life experience, I've worked with lots of different people. It's very difficult for them to use their legs or their arms or whatever. But being outside in the sunshine and getting that vitamin D and listening to the birds and feeling the wind against their face, that is just, it's powerful. And it's powerful for the mind, it's powerful for the body. And I know it's hard work. And I know that a lot of our kiddos here don't get outside as often as they would want to, because it does take a village to get some of these guys, especially in the winter time, to get them all bundled up and get them all, you know, cozied in their chairs and stuff like that to be outside. But all I can say is it's worth it. It really, really, really is worth it. And you don't have to actually get something in return. Like, you know, they're loving it. You know, they're benefiting from it. And so I think that's my biggest message, is to get outside, and to just see what we have. Outside being your balcony, outside being the park, outside anywhere, and just, you know, there's a lot of benefits to nature. And I think more than ever, we all need it. And it's there. It's accessible. It's there for the taking. It's free. It's there for the taking. You know, you don't need to pack a picnic lunch or anything. Just be outside for 20 minutes of fresh air, and it'll do the world of wonders for everyone.
That's a really nice message, because I agree. There is, like, just go outside. Even if it's 5, 10, 15 minutes, like, just enjoy it. And then come back inside and do your work and go back, but just take a break, go outside. That's really nice.
A little reset.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah, a little reset.
Thank you so much for this. That was insightful. And it was so cool to hear all about, like, what was happening inside your mind while trying to do it. Like, that was amazing.
Trying to stay focused. I think that's what was trying. Thank God for the husband. Stay on track. You know, yeah. Just focus, Carolyn. Focus. Yes, that was the goal.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're so very welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. If you would like to request a device, you can go to the Tetra website at tetrasociety.org under the Solutions tab and click Request Assistance. To become a volunteer in your region, you can go under the Volunteer tab and fill out the volunteer registration form. For more information, or just to check out what we do, you can look for us on Facebook under Tetra Society of North America. Thanks again, and see you next time.